it's still war in the Middle East. And this really hurts, because if you look at Christianity, if you have any respect or any appreciation of the historical role of Christianity, you'd have to realize it starts in Syria. It starts with this guy, Saulus, who gets knocked off his horse on the road to where? To Damascus. And you can still go and see where the tradition has it, that this occurred. So this was the organizer of Christianity. When Saulus became Paulus, then that's when the faith, the church, the organization, because that's what it is, begins to flourish. And those letters, right, the letters that make up much of the New Testament are in effect internal documents of a political and religious organization, and you can read them. So the idea that the cradle of Christianity is still under this kind of attack is absolutely abhorrent and must end. But of course, the only way to do that is to work with the existing government. That is to say, the government of President Bashar al-Assad, who was universally recognized, at least de facto, by just about everybody in the world, and who has been reelected, and who is the only legal government of that country. The idea that we hear from, for example, Mrs. Clinton, in her raving performance in that debate, that you can do this without Assad is absolute insanity. Assad is the absolutely essential element of any strategy to crush the ISIL, Daesh terrorist congeries. And if you go and look at the Republican debate that we've just had about 10 days ago, you can remember that in this debate we had all sorts of Republicans, be it Christie, be it Kasich, be it Rubio and others. They want a no-fly zone over Syria. A no-fly zone means a tremendous bombing campaign over all of Syria. Don't let them kid you. Mrs. Clinton makes crude attempts to hide this fact. A no-fly zone must be preceded by the destruction of every airport, airbase, hangar, radar installation, airplane repair facility. Anything that has to do with flying has to be preemptively destroyed. Helicopters, helicopter bases, aircraft on the ground, runways have got to be cratered and put out of action. That's what a no-fly zone is. And of course, now you've got Russia on the scene, who will not respect your no-fly zone. So you're on the road to World War III. And I actually think Obama's critique of that was at least much more sensible than the fascist Republicans. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Merry Christmas to all, Happy New Year to all, and all other observances that are going on. We're in support of all of them, especially if they bring greater charity into the world, right? The so-called agape, which is it's the essence of any kind of Christianity. And let me also point out, if you consider yourself to be a Christian, you cannot support fascist, bigot, hate-monger Trump, nor his somewhat diluted and, did I say diluted? No, diluted follower there, his wingman, who's about to turn into his replacement, and that's Cruz. So, concerning this business with the no-fly zone and the safe haven, which is now boiled up again, these are the demands of Erdogan, right? Anybody who comes out for those things, I'd say, oh, are you on the Turkish payroll? Are you on Erdogan Davutoglu payroll? Or are you on the Saudi payroll? Or how about the Qatar payroll? You notice Bernie Sanders at this debate, he loves King Abdullah of Jordan. Man, take a look at that guy's human rights record. He's an absolute monarch. Forget it. He loves Qatar. Bernie loves Qatar. Bernie loves Saudi. The guy's a monarchist. What can I tell you? The only countries he likes in the Middle East are absolute monarchies. They're not even feudal monarchy. Feudal monarchy much better than this absolutist Dark Ages monarchy that we have in the form of these groups. I guess he's gonna tell us about Morocco soon, and he's gonna tell us about a couple of other places, right? They probably go through the list of the Gulf Cooperation Council. But still, the question was the no-fly zone. And concerning the no-fly zone, it means bombing the entire country to kingdom come. And then, in the process of this, Russia will not allow it, and you're headed for World War III. So indeed, if you want World War III, then you guys up there in New Hampshire, right, you early voters, if you vote for Christie, don't complain when the rockets come down, because you've been asking for it, right? Everything that happens in international affairs is a two-way street. Reciprocity. Sauce for the goose. Sauce for the gander. Turnabout is fair play. All of this is the essence of international affairs. So if you don't want it done to you, don't do it to anybody else. In a certain way, it's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So there we are back with some element of charity. But now, when Mrs. Clinton says, my no-fly zone, she says, Mrs. Clinton's no-fly zone is not the same as, for example, the Christie mean, aggressive, unforgiving, shoot-on-sight, hip-shot, cowboy sort of no-fly zone. Why then, she's lying, but she says, with her no-fly zone, the first option would not be to start shooting. You'd try to prevent people from coming in there. But what if they refuse? What if the Russian position is, which is true, that they've been invited by the legitimate government? You have not. And who the hell are you anyway? And get out of the way. And who are you giving orders to, right? You have no mandate in the Security Council or anything like that. Now, last week we did have this interesting and perhaps promising development that there's going to be and it has been enacted now, a 1.5-year timetable to try to bring about this political solution. But there are too many careers of neocon fascist madmen in the State Department and mad women, and also among the humanitarian bombers. They're going to have a very hard time getting away from this Assad derangement syndrome that we are seeing. But the main point is that Hillary Clinton's no-fly zone is just as much after World War III as Christie's. The only differences are rhetorical. Christie might get you into a shooting war 10 or 15 minutes earlier than Mrs. Clinton, but this is the same. So now we look out on this incredibly bleak and desolate political landscape and hope for some unforeseen change, and try to do the best we can. In other words, most revolutionary thing you can do is tell the truth loudly, clearly, and systematically. Say what is going on. State bluntly and hopefully effectively what is actually happening. Sometimes that's the most you can do. Now, Christmas in the shadow of fascism. We have a couple of pieces of rays of light, beams of light at the end of the tunnel. Ramadi, the second largest city in the Anbar province of Iraq. The Iraqi army, much maligned, has now redeemed itself to a significant extent by getting into the center of Ramadi. They're now in the center. And the Iraqi military estimates that after about 72 hours, they will have essentially taken the city, liberated the city, kicked out the ISIS lunatic, fanatic butchers, genocide cult. Right now, the ISIS people are down to about 300 fanatics in sniper positions inside the rubble of this unfortunately destroyed city. But now, we just had Sinjar in the 11th of November, a little bit more than a month ago. Sinjar fell within 2 days, and now in this case, Ramadi seems to be going rather faster than was widely thought. You got to remember, the Iraqi army is so hard on these guys, right? Remember, Jerry Bremer destroyed that army in an act of complete lunacy, which was countenanced by Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and the rest of them, Kandi, destroyed the Iraqi army. And remember, the other thing is the tradition in the Iraqi army is that you get bribed. The United States had started to bribe the Iraqi army back in 1990, 1991. Desert Shield and Desert Storm included large components of bribery. Later on, 2003, another round of bribery by the U.S. and others. And now you can see what's going on is Saudi bribery, Qatar bribery, Emirati bribery from the United Arab Emirates and all the rest of this stuff. So that's what's going on. But it means that it shows again that ISIS, ISIL, Daesh can be defeated. Now, the issue that remains on the table, and this is in some ways the shame of the civilized world, and I don't care, Russia, United States, Europe, Germany, France, everybody, the shame of the civilized world is that the Jarablus corridor is still functioning. In other words, that traffic of the oil coming out and going into the Turkish and international markets, and the fanatical recruits, the ammunition, the food, the spare parts, the sinews of war going in. That Jarablus corridor has to be closed. This is a crime against civilization. There is no mystery about this. ISIS is not some kind of mysterious force. It's not a spirit that comes in the window. It's a very stinking, malodorous pile of creeps who come in, and they need to be supplied. They need food, they need ammunition, they need gasoline, they need spare parts, they need all this stuff. You close the Jarablus corridor, and that is the end of them, and who is the only legal government of that country. The idea that we hear from, for example, Mrs. Clinton in her raving performance in that debate, that you can do this without Assad is absolute insanity. Assad is the absolutely essential element of anywhere to Damascus, and you can still go and see where the tradition has it that this occurred. So this was the organizer of Christianity. When Saulus became Paulus, then that's when the faith, the church, the organization, because that's what it is, it's still war in the Middle East. And this really hurts, because if you look at Christianity, if you have any respect or any appreciation of the historical role of Christianity, you'd have to realize it starts in Syria. It starts with this guy, Saulus, who gets knocked off his horse on the road to begins to flourish. And those letters, right, the letters that make up much of the New Testament are in effect internal documents of a political and religious organization, and you can read them. So the idea that the cradle of Christianity is still under this kind of attack is absolutely abhorrent and must end. But of course, the only way to do that is to work with the existing government. That is to say, the government of President Bashar al-Assad, who was universally recognized, at least de facto, by just about everybody in the world, and who has been reelected.